come here to like strategies, sorry, I did this before, strategies and approaches. I chose an inappropriate strategy to solve the problem. The strategy I chose did not help me get the correct answer. And we've seen that before when we've graded exams. They have no idea to do. Here, I choose a strategy that did work. I kind of got myself started in the way, but it really, in this case, the person actually got it right, but we could also imagine we could have a category for, I started right, but then I kind of got lost halfway. Here's, I chose a strategy that made sense. I was able to get an answer without getting confused. And then they have this exceeding expectations, which I don't know if I agree with. And this was, I solved the problem more than one way, you know, and I mean, you can keep that or not. But the point is you can look at already existing rubrics and then you can modify them as needed. Okay, and we have a rubric, again, we've got a rubric template and lots of examples. And I can just tell you, you can just Google, you know, whatever, you know, general ecology, final, whatever. Anyways, there's lots of rubrics out there if the ones I provided aren't good, aren't what you need. It's also really important that you define authorized and unauthorized information sharing. I posted something, I wrote the second week of class, second week of the BOLT, on collaboration versus cheating. And here you can see someone, I mean, this took a lot of time. They took the label off their water bottle. They then inserted a bunch of formulas that they might need for the exam. Then they carefully replace the label, and then they are going to drink from that water bottle during the exam. It's totally set up because here it's a chemistry exam and this is kind of more math, but whatever. Anyways, the point is students have all sorts of methods for cheating. So you want to kind of, you need to tell them what you consider cheating. And for mine, because I'm doing a lot of problem sets in genetics, I had described the difference between collaboration versus cheating. And one of the things at the end of it that I did was I really thought about kind of some of the ethical questions that students might ask themselves. You know, if you value the education you or your parents are paying for, you will not cheat. All of a sudden, when you think about your parents paying for it, and then you think about cheating, it becomes less palatable. If you are at CS to be able to gain skills and information, you will not cheat. But here, this is really on us. The assessments have to allow them to gain skills as well as information. If you value honesty and expect to be treated with honesty, you will not cheat. And that kind of goes without explanation. Okay, I'd also like to talk about honor codes. And it's hard to have a signed honor code, but you can use Adobe Scan. It's super easy, and you can have an honor code. So let's talk a little bit about honor codes. From an academic integrity white paper published in 2017 with the link shown right there, the most interactive trust method is a signed honor code. Whether the learner signs the code on paper or e-signs, the act of signing one's name in order to agree to the tenets of the honor code, it provides psychological weight to the honor code's provisions. And having a signature helps faculty members to hold to a stricter, zero tolerance stance when dishonesty is detected. And here's an example. There's one I got online. I will not engage in, condone, or assist others in any act of dishonesty or plagiarism. This one's good because your students have to learn what condone means. They'll have to learn what plagiarism means. And then this is actually the one that when I went to college, I used this one. I have neither given nor received unauthorized aid on this assignment. And what kind of made me laugh was how well I remembered this. I wrote it so many times, and it actually had psychological weight because I remember it. It was a long time ago, okay? You can also are free to write your own, keep it short, but you can write your own honor code. And here's a little bit of data. It's from 2005. It's a little depressing, but it still shows a trend in the right direction. The Center for Academic Integrity survey showed that only 23% of students at colleges with traditional honor codes reported one or more incidents of serious test or exam cheating in the past year, contrasted with 45% of students at colleges with no honor code. So the numbers are really high. I mean, 23% with students, but still, there's a nice big 22% difference. So honor codes can actually make a difference. You also want to vary assessment, and I'll give you some ideas here. At the, when you want to think about your big course objectives and kind of, you want to think about kind of large scale, open-ended, you can or cannot use collaborative assignments. When students discuss the material with each other, they actually learn a lot. So having a collaborative assignment can actually work well. And I'll talk a little bit later about making sure people in groups all work together. You want to reduce assessments that only require memorization, keep these low stakes. Was an asynchronous pre-lecture, pre-reading viewed? Those are the kind of things that are perfect for easy multiple choice. And again, as we mentioned before, multiple choice exams can be retaken if need be, if the student got a question wrong. So here's kind of a quick list of some of the things you can consider using in your class. You can have students solve problems. They can write short essays. And short essays you can actually upload through Beachboard. Solve problems, they might write out, and then you can use Adobe Scan. They can describe a strategy for solving a problem. Besides just solving a problem, they can talk about how they went about doing it. They're going to take one step back, think a little more kind of meta of how to solve a problem. They can write that out, take a picture of it, and send it to you as a PDF. You can ask students to write their own problems and ask them, throw these sort of important, use a pedigree. It has to have epistasis, in 3 generations. You can ask them, and they're kind of creative, and it's sort of a lot more fun for them than just doing that problem. You can ask students to make a video, or ask them to make an infographic. And here's just an article on different infographic tools that you might want to use. So by varying assessment, especially in this online world, where, all of you, I'm sure you're experiencing this right now, we're just so sick of sitting on computers and doing Zoom. It's really nice to have alternate kinds of assessments. You can also use reflective questions. And one of my pre-readings was by Francis Su. He's a mathematician at Henry Harvey Mudd College. And you had to read one of his. Here's a separate blog post that he wrote that I also really recommend. And these reflective questions are just so neat because you're kind of asking the students to really take a step back and ask like how the meaning and the information is really affecting them. And I really like these questions a lot. And they're great about persistence because a lot of the questions ask like, if you didn't at first succeed, how did you finally work at it? So asking people like, how did you persist? And I saw persistence and grit in many of the things we're looking for. And again, if you look at a lot of the Center for Teaching and Learning and look at a lot of the information that they're coming up in many of their webinars, they kind of talk about different types of assessment. And one of the most important is something called authentic assessment, right here, authentic assessment. And this is going to kind of mirror the tasks and skills that are needed outside of the university. So the kind of list that we put together on the chat. There's active assessment, where students actually take part in the assessment process, such as in writing questions, formulating questions, even if they're true false. Asking students to think and write questions can be really helpful. Formative assessment, we'll talk about this more, but that's assessing while students are learning during the process. You can do polling or Top Hat. I know a lot of people in our department are using Top Hat and really like it. There's also experiential assessment. And this is not only doing something hands-on, but it's doing hands-on with reflection. And right now there's certain museums or gardens that are open. You can set up an assignment where students will go there and go maybe do an online tour, and then they'll answer questions. And that is a really nice experiential assessment. It's also important that you do assessment often. So we tell our students that for every hour of lecture, there should be about 3 hours of studying. So if you have an hour and 15 minutes twice a week of lecture time, that would be about 7 hours of studying per week. And if you ask students to every 3 weeks take an exam and you expect them to study 21 hours for the exam, they may or they may not do it. It's actually much more effective to give them weekly tasks. And so students need frequent opportunities, this is from the Graham Gibbs article, to perform and receive suggestions for improvement. Students need chances to reflect on what they've learned, what they still have to learn, and how to assess themselves and see like how they're doing. So by giving assessments every week, you actually are allowing them to kind of reflect on the material right away. Sorry, that went kind of fast. Okay. Okay, sorry. All right. You also need to provide feedback quickly. And feedback is not solely a score. Feedback should be a little deeper, and we'll get into this here. So, and one of the things that studies have showed, I did not realize this, but actually from my experience, it actually makes a lot of sense, is that high standards are best understood through feedback, less so through the initial instructions. So you might give a very detailed instruction, and then students may not get it, like for an oral presentation or something like that. Then you give them feedback, exactly what you're looking for. They do it again, but from their feedback, they've done much better. And I've noticed this a lot for my upper division courses. Since I started giving more detailed feedback, the quality of the presentations has gone way up. And actually studies actually show this to be the case. Helpful, quick feedback is important. When students rate the quality of the course, they like knowing how they're doing, understandably. And then it's also really important for our at-risk students. So literature on formative assessment that's intended to support learning distinguishes between feedback that tells students they're hopeless or among the bottom 10% of students, like getting a D grade and just giving them a super low score, 5 out of 20, and feedback that tells students exactly where they have gone wrong and what they can do about it. Grades without feedback are particularly damaging to at-risk students. And I know I've graded an exam where the person was so off, even like not even starting to understand it, and I didn't even know how to even begin to give feedback. But that's where you actually need to give feedback and encouragement. So as you can imagine, especially in a large class, graders are going to be necessary. And you can get a group of students who maybe took your class in the past, and it ends up being kind of a really positive experience. So I just want to first talk about that we talked in Friday that if you have more than 50 students in your class, you can have one grader per 50 students. So I have 180 students in genetics. I'm going to have 3 or 4 graders. Again, if your course has less than 50 students, provide justification for a grader. If you have a certain type of assignment that a grader would be really helpful, please ask for a grader. The graders should be upper division undergraduates. Our master's students are going to be teaching labs. A lot of our master's students maybe decided not to come because of the pandemic, so you really need to tap into those undergraduate upper division students. Those students have to attend synchronous, asynchronous lectures. They can actually help respond to the chat stream during synchronous lectures, because right now I'm seeing as I'm presenting for my PowerPoint, I can't see the chat screen. And these upper division undergraduate students, they gain a lot. Besides, they're going to get money, which obviously is a good thing, but they're also going to have a deeper understanding of the course material. So it's a great review for them. You've got to have rubrics, and these rubrics are going to set high expectations, help students understand what needs to be done for improvement. For PDF files, you got to use the comment tool. And you're going to have to work with your graders throughout the process. It's not just like, oh, here's your rubric, bye, good luck, thanks, just upload it to each board of the grades. You actually, you're each going to have to maybe read like 10 random papers, then talk about, oh, this one is exactly what we're looking for. This is a high grade, this is a medium grade. Like, just like how you do when you grade an exam. Like for me, when I grade an exam, I kind of look through a couple of problems first, and I kind of get a feeling of how I'm going to grade it. You're going to have to do that with your graders initially. And also make sure your graders appreciate the process of thinking through problems and not solely just getting the right answer. But you can integrate this as you work with your graders. Another thing to think about, just from efficiency, is you might want to, maybe you assign, like in genetics, they have 4 or 5 problems that they do each week, and maybe you only assess 2 of them. The students won't necessarily know what those are going to be, but if you have 180 students, that might be a way to do this. So they have to do all 5 questions, but only 2 are going to be graded. But anyways, you can think about this depending on just the workload. Okay. All right. You also want to increase formative and decrease summative assessment. And so kind of what's the difference? Formative assessment is during the learning process. So when people are forming their learning, it promotes learning. It's oftentimes lower stakes and includes activities and increases student buy-in. Just a second, hold on, sorry. Summative assessment is done at the end of the learning process. You evaluate what was learned, often higher stakes, exams, papers. These are the kind of things that really bring in a lot of the big course learning objectives, a lot of the career skills. And so remember for an online course that some of the material may only be assessed during those weekly assignments. You're not going to do everything in the summative assessment, or it becomes just what we've been talking about. We want to avoid just like this encyclopedic memorization type of learning. Okay, another alternate form of assessment are discussion boards. And there's a discussion board on our current Bolt. And there's a lot of people who have been putting up little technical tips on there, kind of information. And discussion boards, you can actually use these. And here's, it's a great alternative form of assessment. It works really well for smaller classes. For 180 students in genetics, it's going to be real difficult. Faculty, they set up topics. Students are required to respond, and you can grade in accordance to rubric. Here's an example of a rubric, and here's some examples. Post topics related to the discussion topic, prompts for the discussion of topic, versus post topics which do not relate to the discussion context, make short or relevant remarks, such as, ooh, I agree with Bill. So you can really think about how you can actually present this rubric to the students so they know when they get on the discussion board, and tell them, like, you, for every 3 topics, you need to make a comment, and your comments need to be meaningful. Okay. We also talked about group work. And it's common now for group work that individual group members actually do a teamwork participation rubric. And here's an example of one. So the teammate never contributed to the project versus the teammate always contributed to the project. Teammate always worked with others' ideas. The teammate always offered assistance, and various things of this. And this can count for maybe 10% of the final project grade. You can keep it totally confidential. It's really important that students know this is confidential. But this, if students know that this is happening, then they're much less likely to be like total slackers, because they know that they're going to be assessed. And this can make these collaborative projects much more meaningful, because you can't just blow it off. There's going to be a consequence if you do. So again, to kind of reiterate, you want to teach what will be assessed. Connect assessment to learning objectives and career skills. You want to be clear and specific in assessment instructions and expectations. Vary assessment, assess often, provide feedback quickly, increase formative, decrease summative assessment. And a word I hate, but I actually really like it in terms of this: leverage the knowledge that assessment motivates students. Use this to your advantage. That's what leverage means. Effective assessment will allow students to become engaged with the material, gain an appreciation of the subject, along with the good grade. They want their good grade, but why not get the goodies that we want them to learn along with the good grade? So what we're really doing is changing things. When we test with multiple choice, we create this kind of a situation where we're trying to stay ahead of the students are trying to stay ahead of us. It's kind of this fruitless chase. It really, I mean, it was great. It was a great cartoon, and it's actually one of my favorite cartoons. Sorry, oh my God. Sorry. Okay. Okay, sorry. Okay. But we really want to switch this to this kind of a more of a cooperative. And this is like I don't know if this is a real, everyone uses this as cooperative animal behavior. Ted, you can tell me whether this is totally made up, but here is a toad or a frog carrying a rat across the water. I don't know if this is real or not, but so basically what we're doing is, by using effective assessment, we are helping our students gain critical skills that they need after they graduate, or even while they're in college and throughout their entire lives. Okay. And again, your assignment for Thursday, let me go over this real quickly. There's also a Word document. I'm asking that you please design one formative assessment for one of your module unit learning objectives. Those are the second level learning objective. Can't be multiple choice. Try the assessment yourself and improve. Suggest ideas for how you would design your lecture to prepare students for this assessment. And then design one summative assessment for one of your course learning objectives. This assignment may address more than one course learning objectives. Your summative assessment needs to be linked to important career skills and list these career skills, or these important attributes we want our students to gain. And then start creating a rubric just for one of the assessments. It's a lot of work, but to start thinking about how to design a rubric is really great. So this is what's assigned. You need to upload those to the Beach Board before your discussion on Thursday. And finally, my last slide is, I want you guys, let's discuss. I hope I kind of have a habit of flying through things, which I know I did. And so I kind of chose this picture. This is Silverado Trail in the Cleveland Forest. And I really like this picture of this trail. It's actually my favorite part of the trail. It's a long uphill, but you clearly have a very clear path forward. We really need to think about how we assess students and how to best serve our students. There's a path forward. It's not easy. It's clearly uphill, but I think it's going to be kind of amazing when we really make these changes and we really engage graders and we engage our students. And so I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to start looking at the chat box and kind of get into this, which is really long. So let me open this up. Okay. Lots about honors, not this frog. Mouse hat isn't a thing like it should be. Critical difference. Okay, so I'm just kind of looking on, okay, and I agree about this peer culture thing. And oh, thank you, Amanda. So anyways, if we could, I'm really happy to answer